Hi kids, I accessorized with these glasses today on purpose because I feel it really goes with the project that we're working on. Today's tutorial is about ruffles, as you know. Again, this is all a learning process for me. A lot of you know I have a really patchwork education. I sort of just go until I learn the thing that I want to learn. So I have some very official education, and I have a lot of real-world experience working for manufacturers and designers. And of course I've had my own design company for 10 years. But some of this stuff, these projects, I mean, it's a smattering, right? Sometimes you just want to slap together something quickly, and so here we are. I'm really open to hearing your feedback, because when you have the varied background that I have, I want to make sure that it's accessible for you, for regular people who maybe have their mom's sewing machine but never really learned how to use it. Oh, hello, Ping Pong. And or maybe you know, like, you make wedding gowns too, but sometimes you just want to make something quick and dirty and fun, and so that's what these tutorials are supposed to be. I'm trying to see which ones you guys respond to most and seem to like best. Ping Pong doesn't like any of them, but she likes you. Yes. So anyway, yes, feedback would be great, because again, I don't want to make them too challenging, but I don't want to make them too easy as well. If you feel like you could be pushed a little bit, or I could branch out into things that are a little bit more complicated, because obviously I'm not. Fashion has always been a very cloaked industry, and there's so much secrecy and there's so much gatekeeping, and honestly, it's bullshit. I don't care. I'm more than happy to share everything that I know, because if not, it's gonna die out, and I really profoundly don't want that. And honestly, none of us make the same stuff. We could, even in class, you guys have been in classes with people where you're given the same assignment and everybody comes up with something wildly different. So I'm really not that worried about sharing the stuff that I know. In terms of community over competition is what we should be striving for, and I firmly believe in that. And I think it'll help fashion and beading and garment construction evolve, because it's the current state of it is just a tragedy. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. This is a really long intro today. I'm trying to get more comfortable being in front of the camera, and Ping just wants to knock the camera over. Can you come here, you goof? What's the matter with you? So anyway, let's get started. Okay, kids. So for the project today, I'm using this awesome sequin fabric and this great pink netting, and I'm going to be using for my pattern this awesome sequin top that I got at a vintage store that I love. So yeah, basically my uniform right now is jeans, or like my cool pants that I have, and some spangly top like this. I have very many variations of this outfit, so I'm going to make another one because that's how I want to dress this winter. So let's try it out. There are two things that I am taking into consideration for this. One is that I got this fabric for a deal because it was a remnant that they had already cut off. And the other is that I don't want to just lay this on my fabric to cut around it, because I'm a bit of a klutz, and despite this being my profession, I'm really scared to nick this with scissors. I know that I've spent an enormous amount of my time cutting out really expensive fabric, but even still, I think it's a little dicey to cut around this. So I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna make a pattern for this that will fit with this fabric and go from there. So the way that I'm gonna do this to make it as easy as possible, and I'm getting more nervous these days because there are actual people who know how to stitch and sew and stuff following this newsletter now. These are not professional techniques. These are techniques for us to make fun things for ourselves quickly and easily. So that's what we'll be doing. One tip though that I do have is, and you might find this is because this is a stretch fabric, but it frequently happens just even with non-stretch fabrics. You might find that your selvage edge is tighter than the rest of the fabric. And the easiest way to deal with that is to cut it off. Tight selvages drive me insane. And I actually think I can use this part for finishing later. So I'm just gonna chop it off because we don't need it and it's messing up what our fabric looks like. So the first thing I'm gonna do is hack that off. And again, if you were professional or seeking to be semi-professional, you would probably make your patterns out of pattern paper. But most people don't know what that is or where to get it. Which, by the way, you can actually get it if you're in Toronto. You can get it from Adam at the leather and sewing supply place. But assuming that you don't know what that is or where it is or why it is, we are going to make our pattern out of broadcloth. Because when I was very young and not professional yet, I made all my patterns out of broadcloth. And it works really well. So this is just cheap cotton broadcloth. I have a ton of it because it's what I make the mock-ups of my gowns out of for my clients. And the reason I like it is because it costs like $2 a yard. And it's really strong. It doesn't, like even if you cut it on the bias, it doesn't really move. It's a very stable fabric. And so it's kind of ideal for testing patterns and for making patterns, really. So I've got this remnant left over. And again, if you wanted this to be more professional, you might iron out these creases, but I'm not gonna, because I don't feel like it. Alright. And my piece of fabric isn't quite big enough to do this properly. If I were doing this properly, tracing this out, I would have gotten more of it because this top is actually, it's all one piece. So it would have been, its only seams are here. But for our ruffle top, we want a seam here as well because that's where all of our ruffles are gonna go. So I should have got a piece that was as wide as this top, but because I got such a deal on this, I was like, I'll just make it work. This is how wide my fabric is. And that's all I need to know for that. And this is how I'm going to cheat this. Lay this out in sort of, okay, where's my middle here? It's about my center, I think. Just gonna kind of come down like that so that I can fit it within the fabric I've got. It's not gonna end up making a huge difference, I don't think. I guess we'll find out. And if I find out that it sucks, I guess you guys just won't ever see this, so we'll be fine. My pattern, and I am going to mirror this. I'll show you how I mirror things. And I'm going a little bit out from the edge because again, we're going to need our seam allowances, so. And I do like my sleeves to be a little on the shorter side. I know that not everyone does. I think it makes me look taller. But according to my tall friends, if you actually are tall and you do that, it makes you feel like you're growing out of your clothes, which I think is hilarious and interesting. Not in a bad way. I believe you that you feel that way. Okay. So this is my very rough trace. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab my Sharpie. So our center is pretty much there. Lay that together. And I'm just going to split my differences on each side to make sure that we are symmetrical. Boom, there we go. This looks like a child's drawing of a top. I went to art school. The other thing is, the fabric that I bought, the sequin fabric that I bought, has stretch to it because it's on that netting. You might want to give yourself a little bit of extra if your fabric does not have stretch in it, because the sleeve could end up being a little snug otherwise. Silly little pattern. Actually, I shouldn't be using my good scissors on sequins. I'm going to be right back because cutting anything metallic with your good scissors is going to mess them up. Don't use your good scissors to cut on sequins. I'm going to go find some junk scissors. Junk scissors. I don't have to worry about ruining these ones. Again, I should mention, this is not how I make clothes for my clients. We were laughing at the store today because I said to the ladies I bought this fabric from, my husband was going to be irritated with more sequins everywhere. And they were like, oh yeah, it won't be that bad. And I'm like, this stuff is going to be everywhere in my house. Fortunately for me, I have a dust buster right next to me. Now, we're going to do the first kind of ruffles. And these ruffles are going to be done on a sewing machine with a ruffle foot. This is not properly tulle. I was going to use tulle, but then I liked this color more. This is like a knitted, there's a word for this fabric. They use it in lingerie. Anyway, it's like a knitted nylon. And I like it because it won't fray when I show you the second kind of ruffles. But it does snag super easily. So I thought it was a good idea to get this for the color. And then the first time that my ruffles get snagged, I'm going to be irritated and wish that I had got tulle. But for now, I'm going to roll with it. So I'm going to even this out first, just to get it smoother along the edge. I definitely won't be hemming these ruffles. Which you can hem ruffles, obviously, especially if you're doing it this with the ruffle foot in a straight stitch. But I wanted this to be quick and easy, and I wanted my ruffles to be sheer. And I wanted wanted to not have to work too hard at edging, so I went with this. But tulle works. Tulle is good, or even like illusion or mesh. All right, so my ruffles are going to be about that wide. And you got to remember to leave yourself a little bit of space for seam allowance. So the second type of ruffle that we're going to do, stay with me here. Yes, I've brought a dinner plate up into my office. I'm going to draw a whole bunch of circles on this. I'm going to try to make it as even as I can. Alright, from here, we cut these into spirals. Ruffle. We set that aside with our other ones. Okay, so our first lesson in ruffles is going to revolve around this guy. Now, so this is a ruffle foot, and again, I got this at Leather and Supply Sewing Depot on Spadina. There's a bunch of different kinds. This is the one that I've been using consistently for years. I have another method I use for ruffling, but if you have a domestic machine, you can still get these. I have an industrial. I have my old Singer here. But yeah, these are available. You can find them online, whatever. But this is going to be what we use to ruffle today. So I'm going to attach this. We put our long, narrow strip of ruffle under our foot. But we don't have to do anything like locking stitches or anything. This sort of does all of it for us. But you do want to keep your finger kind of back here. Obviously not close enough where you're ever going to get hurt by anything. But, go on. Alright. So once you have it started a little bit like that, you just kind of, you get a tighter ruffle if you're kind of bunching it behind the foot as you go. So I'm going to do one and you can watch and we'll see how it goes. You can see our ruffle is coming out. We didn't even really have to do anything. Anyway, here we go, our first ruffle. And this looks pretty, like a pretty decent length for what we're using for our top. So I'm gonna go ahead and do most of the rest of these in this way. Okay, so that's all of our straight ruffles done with the ruffle foot. I'm going to show you quickly a way of doing this without a ruffle foot if you have just a domestic sewing machine. I just have a regular foot and I have got my, if we look up here, I've got my, it's just like a single straight stitch and kind of a wide, like kind of towards the end, like we want a nice long stitch. We don't want it to be too tight and too small, because that would defeat the purpose of what we're up to. So now that I've set that, I'm gonna put this here. And I've taken the light out of my machine so that it doesn't blow out with glare. Okay, so then I've got about 1/4 of an inch allowance there. Let's check it, the size of my stitch. Yeah, my stitch looks nice and long. I'm just gonna make it a little bit longer. Okay. And then pull this off and leave a nice long tail. Clip that. And then we're gonna go back and we're gonna do another row of stitching right next to it. Not on top. You definitely don't want the lines of stitching to cross. Right again, lift our foot up, nice long tail. Okay, now we don't need this thing here in the way anymore. So if you can see here, we've got our tails on either end. Okay, and I'm going to grab the top one. Top one's on this side. Okay, so can you see what I mean? Focus, camera. Any day now, come on. There we go. So I've grabbed the top 2 threads, and if your stitches are loose enough, you can just pull this like that, and then you just gather it by hand. Now this is definitely a lot more tedious than having a foot that does this for you, but if you don't have a foot, then this will do. Anyway, yeah, I'll balance this out, and then now we get to do the fun part and sew all these together so that we can put them in our top. Let's go. Here we are, back, and we have our top here, and this worked out kind of perfectly. It's kind of like almost exactly what we need, which is pretty awesome. It doesn't always just magically work out like that, but for me, I've got pretty much, these are all pretty much the perfect length, so aces. So now my next step, I've got 10 of these that are with the foot. So 2, and then 6. This is the one that we did with the domestic machine. And then for our spiral ruffles, okay, 1, 2. All right, so this is just a perfectly ridiculous amount of ruffles for each side of this thing. It's gonna be so silly, I love it. So what I'm gonna do with each side is I'm going to lay them down and then I'm going to like alternate. So I'll just stitch them all together. So I'll do like ruffle foot, spiral, ruffle foot, spiral, ruffle foot. And even within the spirals, because there's different amounts, so you can see like it's more ruffled at one end than the other because our spiral got tighter. So as I'm going through with my spirals, I'll start at one side and just stitch all the way down. And then if there's extra at the end, I'll fold it back and stitch it in. I won't trim it because the way they taper off, they blend back into each other really well. And the other thing I'll do is alternate which side. So if I start with a tight spiral on that end, or I start with a loose spiral on this end, I'll start with a tight spiral the next time I layer it in. So by the time I'm done, we'll have like this nice bushy full set of ruffles for each side of this, for each sleeve. So I'm gonna go and do that. All right, kittens, here we are. I got my ruffles. So what I'm gonna do now, we're pretty much done. I mean, we're done all the hard stuff. I'm going to sew this from here to here. I'm gonna sew this like that. And then once I've attached this, I'm going to put my second piece on and sandwich it in between there. So just be careful not to get your ruffles caught too much, but then yeah. So I'm gonna go do that, and you can follow along, and then I'll bring it back. And then we'll talk about finishing, because I'm not 100% sure how I'm gonna finish this yet, but I have an idea. I sewed the ruffle to the other side of this top, and I'm sewing it the same one on this so that when I mirror they match, because this fabric is stretchy. So in order to make sure that I'm starting at my right spot, the ruffle has to be on top because the ruffle is the part that doesn't stretch. If I tried to sew it the other way, like with the foot on top of here, it would be pressing this the whole time and then it would end up warped. So just so in case you're wondering why I've done it this way, that's why. So this top is ridiculous, and I love it. I'm very pleased. I think it's very slightly too big, but it is what it is. Now, because it's very slightly too big for me, I mean, I actually like the way that it fits. I'm not too bothered, but this part, the collar, this will keep stretching if I don't finish it properly. Now, I'm gonna tell you guys, if you haven't used a stretch, and hopefully you've given yourself more room in the sleeve, you could probably come in a little bit. I mean, I traced out that other top, which is why I ended up with this, but that other top's not stretchy. Anyway, I could have lost a little bit here and added a little bit more to the sleeves, and they're very slightly too long, but I can handle all of that just in the way that it fits. I don't mind any of it. But the problem with this is it'll keep stretching if I don't finish it properly. So remember when I saved the edges of the selvage of this. Now, the reason I wasn't sure I wanted to do this is because it doesn't match, and I don't really love these colors going together. But I think I'm gonna try to finish it so that when I turn it over, you actually can't see this, but it's stabilizing this edge. I feel like that's a lot more than I can really show you in this tutorial. I mean, that seems unfair. I mean, I'm totally fair. Other option would really just be to turn this over and stitch it. Again, it's going to be a little itchy, but these are going to be itchy anyway because we didn't do our sequin seams the way that we're supposed to. If this was any kind of professional or like quality garment, what you do is you actually trim, like clip off all your sequins from your seam allowances so that none of them are caught in the seams. That's what I do for clients, but since this is just a play top, I didn't worry about that. In any case, I have to finish this in a way that won't let it stretch any further because my neckline is a little bit too wide and my top is a little bit too big. But c'est la vie. Anyway, I will go and do that. But pretty much we're done. I'm pretty pleased with the whole thing. I think it turned out all right, and I love how silly and I mean you can go narrower on your ruffle if you don't want to go as dramatic. I think we all know by now I'm a little extra even on normal days, so if you had like half the ruffles on this, you would have something a lot more sedate and a lot less, I don't know, B. Arthur meets Lady Gaga, but I'm perfectly fine with that. So yeah, I will go and finish my collar and then maybe do, I guess you have to see it on me, don't you? Or otherwise it's not fair. Okay. Okay, so here we are with my awesome ruffle shirt that I'm very chuffed with. This is gonna make an absolutely brilliant holiday outfit. And a word about finishing, because I just remembered that I didn't actually video that. Honestly, all I did was turn the edges over and hem it, like not even twice. I just like literally just turned it over and hemmed it. And then on the inside of this, because I didn't want it to scratch me, the piece that was left over that I mentioned, I just tacked it down and turned it over so that you couldn't see it from the front. And it stabilized it so that it's stretchy enough to get my head through, but it's not going to keep growing so that this becomes bigger than it needs to be. Let me know if you have questions about that, because I finished filming everything really late last night and then only just now remembered that you may have extra questions about that. Anyway, I'm here if you need me. DM me any extra questions you have for stuff I didn't cover. Someone on Instagram asked me if they mentioned that she would love this in a dress. Honestly, just make it longer. Just whatever you're tracing out. I traced out that top. Just trace out something that is the length that you would like and go from there. You should be good. And again, yeah, just let me know if you have any questions. Alright guys, thank you so much.